Kate feels old, alone, and regrettably round. It's the 1st of February and today also happens to be her 40th birthday. This month, she must survive a pending divorce, her best friend's wedding, and her meddling mother. Can she make it to March with her sanity intact? Hi, I'm Hayley Walsh, author of the funny romp of a novel called Making March. The book is available on Australian Book Lovers, and I really look forward to engaging with more readers. If you need a good giggle, I definitely suggest you check it out.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everyone and a huge thank you once again for joining us for the official Australian Book Lovers podcast. As always, our mission is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Kazanko, science fiction and horror author. I'm a reader and one of your co-hosts and co-founder of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, fantasy and picture book writer and reader, your other co-founder and host, and coming to you from Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country on a beautiful autumn day in Australia.
Yeah, well, yes, it is autumn in Australia. Well, at least the southern parts of Australia.
Yeah, I was going to say Naarm, which is Melbourne in the Woiwurrung language, but I thought, actually, no, I'm not in Melbourne. I'm out of Melbourne, so I'll say Australia.
And it is episode 8, so we're almost at double figures. We're getting there.
So episode 8 is fantastic, and I have to say that we have another review on iTunes.
Beauty.
Yeah, do you want to hear it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the heading is brilliant.
Ooh,
and it says,
that's a good start.
It is a good start, yeah. A great podcast for all Australian and Indigenous authors. Thanks, Veronica and Darren, for a fabulous platform for all Aussie authors to promote their books. And that is from Mech 909.
Well, Mech 909, thank you so much for the review. That's amazing. Definitely puts a little spring in the step and lots more motivation to keep going and pump out a whole lot more episodes.
Yes, absolutely. And look, we're creeping up on 500 downloads, which, considering that we've only been going for, just a little over a month and a half, I think is fantastic. So we're obviously filling a niche in some people's day, which is fantastic too. And lots of people mentioning they're listening on the way to work. So maybe we need to do some short commute episodes rather than we do tend to get carried away. Anyway, they can listen to us on the way to work and on the way home, and that will cover everything.
And I recommend listening to it at work as well.
You'll get people into trouble.
No, it's fantastic. Everybody's listening to the show. Thank you so much for supporting us. So we've definitely the trail up the mountain has been cut, and now it's time to head to the top, and it's obviously all the adventure awaits us on the journey there. So, and thank you everyone for being a part of it. But here we are, episode 8, coming off the back of our very first panel podcast, which was super fun. Yeah. With some fantastic authors and talking about romance, obviously. And I think we promised our listeners last time, Veronica, that we might read a few of the wonderful submissions when it came to the contest, asking people to summarize what romance means to them in one sentence.
Absolutely. So just for the people that might have missed in the last episode, the winner said, to me, romance is what transports us out of our everyday life to a remote place of magical and indescribable well-being and joy, of silliness and heart-pounding pleasure, of happiness and light-headed bliss.
There you go.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And we've still got a whole heap more too. So who wants to start? Would you like to take the first one?
Yep, okie dokes. So the next one I've got is when my husband's alarm goes and he tries to sneak out of bed. Before he leaves, he kisses me softly as if I'm not awake and tucks me in so I can continue to sleep.
Aww.
Aw, Oh, see, that's just lovely.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good one.
Yeah, and these are the people who won one of Sue Horsnell's book. First prize, which is the one I read out earlier, won 3 signed copies of Sandy Barker's travel novels, travel romances, and everyone else we're reading out won a copy of one of Susan Horsnell's as an e-version.
Yeah, so hopefully a lot of happy romance readers out there at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, the quote I've got to read is, let's have a look. Romance means a lot to me. Love and protection and care, and to share each other, soulmates. To be in it together, a team, and work at everything every single day. I like that one. Yeah, it's to the point, and it does highlight the fact that it is romance is something to be to share with somebody. You know,
Yeah,
all aspects.
together for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine romance on your own, but I'm so sure it's possible.
All right. A pleasant diversion with interesting characters, places I've never been, and witty dialogue. So I think this person was more about the romance novel.
Yes, definitely.
And what they like from that.
And that's one important thing there, I think, is places I've never been. And that's the beautiful part about, well, I'm sure it's about romance novels, but I think reading in general, it's such a great opportunity to go to places, you know, via your imagination that you maybe never been to or may never have the chance to go to. I mean, it's one thing to watch a documentary or something, but, you know, a book can really take you in there because it can explore the sights, the sounds, the smells, the pace, you know, the different shades of day. So yeah, definitely. Now, my next quote is, romance is the surprise of finding out you are not alone anymore. That's quite cool. Yes. Yeah. I guess that's, yeah, maybe, I mean, I can't speak for you know, what that person had in their intention when they wrote that. To me, I think that's quite nice in the sense of maybe romance is that pivotal moment when you shift from possibly being friends to lovers. Yes. And you realize that you are together. And so that's cool. Yeah. Very special moment, I think, in anybody's life.
Yeah. Okay. I have a starlit night, beg your pardon, a gentle breeze, and a walk along the beach under a bright moon with the one I love. Yes.
Always good. Always need a beach walk when it comes to romance. Yeah. Absolutely. And a bright moon or a sunset. I don't know what, you know, the beach is so many things to so many people, but it's definitely, you know, it's a romantic thing, I think, to everybody. I'd be surprised to find someone who wouldn't categorize it as romantic in some form. And I mean, it's the old cliche, isn't it? When the old singles ads or whatever, Tinder and all that. So, you know, enjoy long walks on the beach. Yeah. I think that's a given. I think.
Also, then it makes me sing the Pina Colada song, you know, so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, next one.
Okay, my next one is romance is choosing to fight for your own happy ending. That's a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it means, you know, chasing that special person, you know, or at least making the opportunity come to life and, you know, being true to yourself and not missing out on that romantic opportunity. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Romance means the little tender gestures exchanged between lovers, showing a deep love and respect.
Yeah.
I really love that one because I remember my mum and dad both long since passed. I remember her telling me coming up to my wedding day also a long time ago. And, you know, you don't expect your mother to tell you, you know, about, you know, give you a sex education just before you get married because you're old and that kind of thing. But I remember her saying that love was not just about that. It was about and it could start with a small glance in the morning over a crowd of kids getting ready for school. And it was those little things that for her meant that even if they didn't have time for each other, it was still sharing that love and respect and understanding. And I've always kind of remembered that as really, I guess, an insight into the, you know, love my mum and dad had.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. And I think, you know, those little looks, those little tender gestures, you know, can be so important because, you know, you can have two people in the same room together, but they can be miles apart in the sense of on their own journey. And but a little gesture or a little look can remind each other that you're in a situation together, you know, as lovers or as, you know, soulmates or, you know, in a relationship. And it can just be that little thing that can change the whole day. So my next one is Romance is My Comfort Zone. They are the books I turn to when I need an easy read that will soothe my soul and warm my heart.
Yeah.
So hopefully that reader is about to have her or his soul warmed and soothed and heart warmed by the prize. Yeah.
And I think that very much came through in the panel, is that a lot of romance is there to entertain and to lighten people and to bring joy, as opposed to, we like to talk about our horror and our dystopian stuff, but, romance is there for very much that. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such an important thing to have that opportunity to make yourself feel good. Why not?
Yes.
Definitely.
And the last winner is romance is when your partner does the little things because she knows it will make you happy. So that's a nice one to end on.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Kind of brings up what I was mentioning about Mum and Dad. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, I'd like to think I was a little bit romantic the last 2 days.
Well, yes.
Yes, because for Melissa's out there, that of course they can't know, but my wife was actually overseas for pretty much 8 months and has now thankfully managed to get back to Australia and is currently in a Medi hotel in the city. But the good thing is she's on the 5th floor, B, she can open the window.
Yeah.
And so it's been kind of like Romeo and Juliet. I can't remember. What's the one with the lady in the castle?
Rapunzel.
Yeah, maybe that one. So there's me sitting down the bottom of the alley and looking up and talking to my wife as she hangs outside the window. So and of course, it made me happy to be delivering little treats and whatnot, knowing that that'll make her happy. So yeah, definitely, it's the little things, like a bottle of wine, unexpected. Yes, it's but it's definitely been a week of romance for me. Because now I can actually see my wife again, so it's very cool. So
nice.
New adventures to begin again.
Yeah.
So it's going to be odd to go from a bachelor to a married man in the blink of an eye.
Yes, and we won't admit that you'd filled up a room with any kind of your junk at all. There's no mention of that. You're not going to tell.
No, I've still got 2 weeks to, well, I can't get rid of the evidence. I can shift it to put off the inevitable.
The spread,
Yes. But, collecting VHS was a fantastic idea at the time. I love them, but I didn't realise how many I've got until I suddenly had to, exit all the evidence out of her office. So, yes, I'm not sure when she'll listen to this, but I'm sorry. They won't be there when you get home. So excellent. But thank you to all of the people that were part of the contest. And it was a wonderful opportunity with the panel. And we look forward to doing some more panels very soon. It was a great opportunity, great fun, and can't wait for the next one.
Yes, beautiful.
So I think it's time now to zip to the news. What do you think?
Okay. Off you go to the news. And
here we go.
So a little bit about the news that I've been listening to this week is that I attended the Flights of Foundry 2021. So this was an online conference that was called Anywhere on Earth, and it was, unsurprisingly, science fiction, fantasy and horror convention. And it's just kind of finalizing. I think there's a few more hours for it to go. But what I loved about it was that you could say it was free, or you could make a small donation if you felt it, because it was a bit of a fundraiser as well. They had speakers and sponsors and all those kind of things. It was online, so they had the panels were on, like they weren't interactive in that you could have the panels, but the other thing was that they had Discord, which I'd never used before. My children had told me about it, like I was so old, didn't I know about Discord? Luckily, Cassie helped me set it up, which was fantastic. And it was
hang on. I don't know what Discord is.
You don't know what Discord is? Well, there you go. So I'm not so old. It's kind of like Messenger and Twitter and Facebook kind of all together, I guess. And
okay.
It's like... and all the people at Discord are going to, throw their arms up in horror. What'll I just tell you? I'll just quickly check out Discord. It's it's going to try and make me log in. It's a platform for conversations, I guess, is the thing. So whether you're part of a school club, a gaming group, worldwide art community, or just a handful of friends that want to spend time together, there you go. It's some kind of chatting platform.
Oh, okay. Like the well, I mean, back in the day, there was the what was it, the messenger thing, the little box you could go in and chat.
Yeah, the one that's now defunct. Anyway, I can't remember.
Yeah,
But
but
what it
I'll have to
meant
have a look
was
into
that,
it. Yeah.
what it meant was that while the panel were talking, you could still sort of talk amongst yourselves for the audience, and you could get your questions ready. And so then the facilitator would go to the Discord and check out the bits and pieces. So
Oh, okay. Yep.
it was quite good. Rather than just having the chat function, you could sort of carry on the side. And it had the conference room and the lobby and the cafeteria, which is not really a cafeteria, and it had where you could talk about your projects, or various groups were playing games, because gamers were invited to this, of course. So you could actually do some of the networking that you would do at an in-person conference,
Okay.
but do it virtually. So yeah, well, it was good fun. And although, of course, when the panels are really good, I'd forget to look at the Discord because I was so busy listening and taking notes on what they were suggesting. But it was brilliant. I didn't attend all of them because naturally it's 24 hours around the clock, and I, didn't find any that made me want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. But there were some great Australians on some of the panels, which was good, and some really good information. So, bits and pieces, as you know, I'm a bit more interested in, the representation of older women in science fiction and fantasy. And there's a great list that one of the authors had on all of those things, which is fantastic. What I loved was that there was a real diversity of people on the panel, few that I'd heard, few that I hadn't, and each panel was incredibly respectful of diversity, be it of a disability or a gender diversity, or the spread of racial races that people were bringing in. And even all the writers themselves were incredibly aware of their audience, but also, and this was some really interesting, and I think it might be something that we have a look at later down the track, about things like decolonizing your stories, and that so many countries have been colonized by other countries, not always English, sometimes by the Spanish, sometimes by the French or the Portuguese or whatever, or sometimes by the Chinese. I think there was somebody from Singapore who was talking about the indigenous Malaysian people and the colonizers. But it was just opened my mind so much to, I guess, non-standard stories, in that we just need to forget the boxes altogether. The hero's journey, out the window with all of that. And it doesn't always have to be a fight, or the person with the biggest gun wins, or it doesn't have to be a reward at the end, and just little things like that really, I guess, poked at my creative juices and said, okay, you need to just think differently about the stories that you're telling, the audience that you're writing for, or how an audience might, receive that. Somebody from a marginalised group might receive your story, even if it's an unconscious thing that you've put in. So yeah, it was just fascinating. So many good sessions.
Excellent. And is there any top 2 or 3 tips or advice that you got from the whole thing?
Well, I really would like to share one with you, which was, I guess the top things not to do when writing women in science fiction and fantasy. So it was a particular author. She's Australian, actually. So one of the big one I'm going to tell you, I absolutely love this. This was from Kat Clay, who's an Australian author, and it was the 11 common mistakes writing female characters. Okay. And it's lovely. It's on YouTube as well, but she's done a blog on it. And so it's, what do sexy lamps, refrigerators, and underwear have in common? They're all tests for authentic female characters. So, it's not universal, but, number one, the character checks herself out in the mirror and thinks she looks hot. Well, women rarely do that. Usually we think there's something not so hot about us. So if you're writing, this is for blokes often, but if you are writing women characters, we don't often check ourselves in the mirror and think we look hot.
Okay, good. So far, I haven't made that mistake.
All right. Now, there is the sexy lamp test, which is, could you replace the woman in the story with a sexy lamp, and would the story more or less be about the same? So, you've got a male protagonist, and, it's how the female characters relate to him. If they're only ever described as a sexual object, so insert sexy lamp, then you need to give them a bit more depth or a few more lines or a little bit of agency, which is the ability to make choices and the ability to do something or to move the story along in this case. So that was...
Yeah, a little bit of skin in the game.
Absolutely. Yep. The next one, I've never heard this one, women in refrigerators. Have you heard that?
No, but I'm very curious to see where this one's going to go.
Right. There was an infamous comic where Green Lantern comes home to find his girlfriend stuffed into a fridge, and it kicks off his own personal journey for justice. But, the woman gets nothing. So if you hear a cry of fridging whenever violence is committed against women to accelerate a man's story arc, well, then again...
okay.
Yeah. So it often in crime novels, there's a dead nameless woman found in a lonely place. A male investigator makes it a mission to find the killer. She doesn't get any agency. So she's just a plot device, I guess, is the thing.
A catalyst for the rest of the story.
Yeah. And look, I won't take any more from Kat's fabulous blog, but I'll suggest that you go along to her. So it's Kat, K-A-T, Clay, C-L-A-Y, all one word, .com, and then /11 common mistakes writing female character. So we will have to see if we can get Kat on the podcast, or get some more. And she's also on YouTube. So that was just a few of the mistakes. There's more there, and it was fantastic. Very good.
That sounds like a pretty interesting read. So we'll definitely pop that link in the show notes for sure.
Yeah.
But now you've got me thinking, trying to remember the story of the body in the fridge. That was a murder. I'm pretty sure it was here in Adelaide. It was, yes. But I think it was a chest freezer. But
right.
Yeah, there you go. Fiction or fact?
Fiction or fact? Yeah, absolutely. So that is my news for this session.
Wonderful.
Go to an online conference, and if anybody has been to one recently and wants to share what they learnt or heard or did, by all means, shoot us an email, and we're happy for you to jump on and tell us all about it.
Excellent. And just off the top of your head, do you know if any elements of the conference are is now people can jump online and have a look at them? And
yes, I believe they are going to have most of the things recorded, and they'll be up briefly. So Flights of Foundry is the Dream Foundry. It's one of the things that the Dream Foundry, which is helping new professionals in the speculative arts. So it's dreamfoundry.org. So by all means, jump onto their website and have a look. And I believe that they'll have that. And you can also join their Discord community. No, so I can say that. And they have year-round industry discussions, prompts and motivation, general advice. So yes, it's discord.gg/Dream Foundry. So yeah, lots of good fun.
Excellent. Is there any other conferences or of the like coming up that you know of that you're going to be taking part of?
I am going to do a couple of courses, but I might hold off on those till next time.
Yes. Well, then maybe it's time. I'll jump into some website news.
Yes.
So still some fantastic titles coming in, and we've got a whole bunch of new listings on the website. Also doing quite a little bit of work behind the scenes. So for a new feature that will hopefully be not too far away. But so at this point, all I can say is maybe to all the writers out there listening to the show or visiting the website, if you have any short stories hiding in those drawers, or you're going to write some short stories, definitely polish them up, and there may be a brand new little home for them or a platform, should I say, to jump out to the world very soon. So fingers crossed that won't be too far off. Lots of little things being done in the background. But as far as titles, we've got some amazing titles that are coming through, and I thought I might read some brief synopsis for a couple of them and then run through some titles. So we've received a book called Secrets and Showgirls by author Catherine McCullough. And this is one you'll find under the historical fiction genre. Now, this reads that Monsieur Maurice is the natty manager of Le Prix d'Amour, one of the most successful cabarets in 1930s Paris. Like its compatriots, the Moulin Rouge and the Folies Bergère, which I hope I said right, its sparkling showgirls and vibrant performers ensure that Le Prix has a devoted following, and that Monsieur Le Prix's owner is a very rich man. But the winds of war blow through the gilded doors of Le Prix, and With the German invasion of 1940, Monsieur Maurice realizes that he has a problem. He discovers that a number of his performers hide dark secrets that would almost certainly see the entire company tossed into a Gestapo cell. So there's a very cool read if you're a fan of 1930s or 1940s Paris and the Moulin Rouge style and showgirls and so it sounds very interesting.
Yes.
So definitely. So that's Secrets and Showgirls by Catherine McCullough. And we've also got one called Gilda's Ark by author Verity Croker. Now, this is, you'll find under our science fiction genre. Now, the Gilda's Ark description is what was supposed to be a 16th birthday celebration cruise for identical twins Gilda and Rosa quickly turns into a nightmare. While her mother and sister are enjoying an excursion on a Fijian island, Gilda, who is unwell and remains on board, finds their ship has sailed off, leaving most of its passengers stranded on shore. An unknown group has taken over the ship. After a few days, they collect thousands of new passengers from a distant archipelago, making conditions on board overcrowded and uncomfortable. Nobody seems to know where they're headed, so the mood on the ship rapidly deteriorates. Though Gilda is desperate to reunite with her family, she meets someone who comforts her and will completely change her world. So that's a very cool premise. So the idea of a ship just suddenly sailing off into a mysterious destination and people being crammed on board. Very cool. I like a good mystery boat story. Something about being on the ocean and being lost is it's intriguing. I don't want to be in that situation myself, but so that was Gilda's Ark by Verity Croker. Again, you can find that on Science Fiction. We also have a title called Life Bound by Marianne Matter. Now, this is a novel you can find under our contemporary genre. And the description of this one is free agents or captives of our past. In Life Bound, characters find themselves caught in situations not of their own making or trapped by ingrained habits, walking in grooves carved out by past events. An artist's progress is pleasingly channeled into a pattern laid down a century earlier. A solitary man's story is almost preordained, but is indecipherable to researchers looking back some 60 years later. Karma mops up in the wake of a mousy clerk. A local legend falls foul of the town gossip. Spouses are constrained or liberated by love. Sexuality, gender, resentments, attachments, and perversities all play a part, yet the grip of the past needn't always hold firm. Many protagonists are offered a potentially life-changing moment. Whether or not they grasp it is up to them. So very eclectic tales, I think, to be found in Life Bound by Marianne Matter. And again, you'll find that under a contemporary genre. And for the last little description I'd like to read is a book called The Blood Within the Stone by author T.R. Thompson. And this is actually book one of a series. And you'll find this under our fantasy genre. So, and the description is that a shadow is spreading across the land and fear will be your downfall. When the prefects of Redmondis discover that their quick minds and quick fingers hide secret potential, young thieves Wilt and Higgs find themselves unwilling recruits. Wilt's ability to sink into others' thoughts, knowing what action they'll take before they do, is both a prized and dangerous gift. The 9 sisters of Redmondis have sensed a growing threat and search for the one who can control the power of the blood within the stone. But even their sinister plots are nothing compared to the force that controls them. As Wilt and Higgs rally their newfound weapons, they discover that the threat to their lives and their very reality is much greater than they realize. So if fantasy is your jam, jump in and have a look at that one. Again, that's The Blood Within the Stone, book one by T.R. Thompson under our fantasy genre. And as far as just a couple more titles to whet your appetite, we have Ouroboros by T.S. Simons, which is actually book 3 of the Antipodes series. We've got The Forked Path, which is book 2 of the Blood Within the Stone series. We have The Letter by Christine Gardner. We've got Shakert, End of Night by Ishmael Soldad. We have the Star Child series, which is The Age of Accra, The City of Souls, The Healing Stone, and Fire and the Falcon by author, now Vicen Taylor. I hope I pronounced that correct. Romance, we have Barefoot and Dumped by Shel Pimblott. Probably that's a difficult situation to be in, I'm sure. So if you want to find out how that turns out, definitely give it a read. We have Keepers by Cheryl Berman, 8 Letters by Susan Horsnell, and Stony Creek by Christine Gardner. So that's just a few of the fantastic new listings on the website. And of course, by all means, jump onto the latest editions page where you can see all of those books and more, and obviously delve into them a lot deeper and read a little bit more about the descriptions and learn a little bit more about the authors.
Very good.
Excellent. So, and again, if you've got those short stories there, start to dust them off, and or if you've been meaning to write some short stories, now might be a good time, because hopefully very soon we'll be announcing some new additions to the website. But until then, keep on having a look at the latest editions and explore some of these amazing titles. They really are. There's so many good books coming through. It's just incredible. So thank you to all the authors out there, and they're still coming in. So it's getting bigger and better every day. Excellent. Now, who have we got for today's interview, Veronica?
For today's interview, we have Rebecca Bowyer. So let me just, because I was just thinking about how many books, before we go to Rebecca's interview, I just checked how many books are on my want to read list, on my Goodreads list. 264.
Oh. You might want to find something to, I suppose there is substances that can avoid the need for sleep, but that may not be the right reason to go down that road.
But anyway, there you go. So, and of course, I picked up so many going to the, I was going to say the Discord conference, but that's not true. The Flights of Foundry. And every time something new comes onto, Australian book clubs, I think, oh yes, I might like to read that one. So it's not looking good. I might need to, settle down and give myself a limit. But I didn't give myself a limit when it comes to Rebecca. So Rebecca is what she describes herself as: a storyteller, novelist, digital strategist, and card-carrying story addict. So we had a lot to talk about, as you can imagine. Now, she lives in Melbourne with her husband and 2 young sons. And when she's not at her day job or wrangling kids, she can be found writing her next novel, or writing about books, reading and writing at Story Addict. And she's the author of 2 speculative fiction novels. The first one is Maternal Instinct, which I've done a review of before. And the second one, which we talked about, is Stealing Time. So I'll leave that for the interview. But Rebecca is also the person who does the roundup for the Australian Women's Writers' Challenge in the diversity section. So if you jump onto her website, you'll see links to all those kind of things as well. And so we talk about climate change and time tabs and ageism and writing around the edges. It's come up a few times, that writing around the edges, where people are not full-time writers and they just do their writing whenever they can. And it just amazes me. It really does. All those kind of things. So off we go to hear about Rebecca Bowyer and her chat with me for Australian book lovers.
Absolutely. Let's bring Rebecca on. Let's go.
So welcome everybody to another author interview. I have with me today Rebecca Bowyer, and I'm just going to throw straight to you. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks so much for having me, Veronica. It's really great to be here.
Very good. Now, Rebecca, I'm going to say that you are a self-described storyteller, novelist, digital strategist, and card-carrying story addict. You live in Melbourne, and your day job, when you're not at your day job of wrangling kids, you're writing your next novel. And we have 2 of your fabulous books on ABL. We have Maternal Instinct. And tell us a little bit about your latest book.
My latest book is coming out 23rd of March. Probably will be out already by the time this goes to air.
Yes.
It's called Stealing Time. It's about Varia, who's a time scientist, also known as a 4th dimension physicist. She has to choose between saving all the children or saving just one child, who just happens to be the most important child in the world to her. But set in a near future Australia, where climate change and resource scarcity has driven our obsession with productivity to the extreme. So people older than 65 are considered to have spent enough time on Earth, and a time chip triggers and actually kills them. So I can't tell you a lot more without spoilers, but her hand is forced when her best friend's son, who she's helped to raise like her own son, goes missing. And Varia has to choose between protecting her own secret or helping save his life.
Thank you. And I'm not going to have any spoilers either, because I've been lucky enough to read an advanced reader copy, and I must, almost take issues that when it said 65 plus, there's this thing happening. I thought, oh, how cruel, but yes, how appropriate.
Not a recommendation, just to be clear.
No, yes, yeah, just as well. Can I ask you then, what inspired you to write Stealing Time?
A chronic lack of time in my own life is where it came from.
Yeah.
When I first started out, the premise that I started with was, what if you could buy time? And a friend of mine said to me, someone's already written a movie about that. It's up there. I can't remember the actor. This is not about that. This is about your own life. And wouldn't it be great if you could just buy little batches of time? So I came up with the idea of time tabs. So I pictured them a bit like the old Listerine
yes,
that you could put on your tongue and dissolve.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just do that, and you ended up with this little bubble for 4 hours and could do whatever you like? So that's where it started from, and I built a whole world around that, which obviously, time would become a commodity. What would that look like? What would that do to society? And it went on from there. So yeah, that was the kernel of the idea that it all started from.
Dystopian worlds yet again. So following up from Maternal Instinct, another one. Is that what you're drawn to, or were those stories just kind of there and they had to be written?
It is absolutely what I'm drawn to. I love the idea of building possibilities. My academic background is actually in history. I did an honours degree in history, but it's not what I'm drawn to write as stories. I use it more to inform, well, this is what's happened in the past. What might happen in the future? And science fiction was something I didn't even realise I was writing when I wrote my first book. It wasn't until I described it to my brother, and he said, "Oh, you're writing science fiction." I said, "No, I'm writing dystopia." And he said to me, "That is science fiction." And I went to a bookshop and actually looked at the shelves under science fiction and went, "Oh, these are all the books I love. Yes. I love science fiction. Who knew?"
It sounds like it just had to come out. So
yeah.
Tell me then, what else sits behind your writing? When did you decide that you wanted to be, actually, let me say, when did you first admit that you were a writer?
I absolutely love that question. It's as though writing is this dark secret identity that you have to grapple with and eventually reveal. And I'm sure there's some sort of thesis in there somewhere. In retrospect, I do find it a little ridiculous that I even struggled to identify as a real writer, but I really did struggle. Despite accumulating plenty of literary credentials. So when I was 10, I had my first story published in a newspaper. When I was 18, I had a story published in a literary journal. When I was 20, I had an article published in a book of historical essays. I didn't start writing until I was 34. I didn't actually consider myself a writer until that age. So that was more than 2 years after I'd started writing online regularly, and after I'd been published in several online magazines, that I started finally saying to people, I'm a writer, which is mad because I've been a writer since I was a kid. So the catalyst was completing the first 15,000 words of what would become my first novel, Maternal Instinct. And to anyone out there wasting countless hours agonising over whether you're a writer or not, just answer this. Do you write? If your answer is yes, then congratulations, you're a writer. Please don't agonise like I did.
Fantastic. There's this kind of fraud syndrome, isn't it? The imposter syndrome around there. But it's, when you ask that very question, do you write?
Absolutely.
Yes. As simple as that. Nice one. So you've talked a little bit about your youth there. Tell me, what was your favourite book as a child?
I loved Open Newton by Isabel Carmody. Absolutely adored it. I adored Elspeth. I think partly because I desperately wanted to be able to read mine. And that it ties in with the question that continues to fascinate me, and it's what drives me to choose the jobs that I do and write the books that I do, is why do people do what they do? Or in other words, what were you thinking, or what are you thinking? So yeah, and I was also lucky enough to hear Isabel Carmody speak at the Melbourne Writers' Festival twice when I was at high school. She was absolutely inspiring, and her basis for writing was always what if. Start with the what if. I think that's what I start with as well.
Fantastic. I heard Isabel speak in a series where they teamed a writer and a scientist, and it was fascinating. It was one of the local libraries. I can't remember. My sister-in-law invited me over there, and it was just such a great conversation. And I love the way that Isabel could, bring the possibilities, as you said, the building possibilities, the what if, to what this particular scientist, I can't even remember what her specialty was at the time, but it was really fascinating to hear science fiction, fantasy and science all in the same conversation.
It really is. Yeah, it really would have been.
Yeah, she was amazing. So a little bit about, I guess, thinking about what your day job, the last lady I was interviewing was a teacher. Lynn Webster was a teacher, and she was talking about how writing, sort of teaching, influenced her work. How does you manage sort of day jobs? So many of our authors are part-time, so to speak, or they talk about their other job or their day job, or the one that, brings in the money. What are your thoughts on creative writing versus day job?
I think I do have a day job, so I work near full-time and right around the edges of that. I also have 2 young children and a husband, so it fits in around it somehow. I'm never quite sure how.
Yep.
But my day job is writing plain English content. It's very much about focusing on the audience, getting a message out, making sure it's easy to understand, easy to read. And I do wonder sometimes whether that has played a part in my developing my own voice in creative writing.
Yeah.
Around the same time, I also started blogging on my personal website at storyaddict.com.au. And my degree in English literature was all about literary fiction, but I didn't enjoy writing that. So I wonder whether my day job, writing plain English, combined with my understanding of stories from my English degree and a lifetime of reading, has actually helped create a voice and a style of writing that's a bit more easy to read. It's a bit more accessible than literary fiction might be, which nothing against literary fiction. I love literary fiction. It's beautiful. But it's not the style that I write in.
And I certainly found that your prose is particularly easy to read. There's nothing that makes you stumble or fall out of the story. You know, turning the pages quickly, being a voracious reader, I turn my pages quickly, but there's nothing you have to skip over. I find sometimes if I'm reading science fiction or fantasy or sometimes horror, whatever that might be, that there might be segments that you go, oh, here's a description, you go click, 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 with your brain flickers down. But I find that your writing has something to say in every sentence, which is fantastic.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. That's exactly what I'm aiming for. When I first started writing Maternal Instinct, my first book, my main audience on my blog at that stage, and it still is, was mothers with young children. And I was a mother with young children myself. And so being able to focus on anything for too long was quite difficult. So I think that was the audience that I had in mind for that book. And that style's just continued. That easy to read and enjoyable.
Very good. And of course, my background as a midwife made me very, very comfortable with the subject matter of maternal instinct. And, we could talk about obstetrics versus midwifery and all those things later, but another time, young mothers. Tell me though, both Stealing Time and Maternal Instinct are set in Melbourne. So why Australian settings for you?
As a reader, it's just such a joy to pick up a book and read about strange things set in familiar places. And I wanted to put a bit more of that joy out there as a writer. I find that particularly with some genres, you'd be forgiven for thinking that all the fictional events always happen in New York.
Too true.
And I have had feedback from people who the suburbs that I used in Maternal Instinct, it's more about place than I think Stealing Time is. But I had people write to me and say, oh, I know that area in Mitchell. I grew up around there. It's so exciting to see that in a book. So, yeah.
It is fantastic. And I think there are so many beautiful places, just around Melbourne, being a Melbourne girl, I can say that. And Darren and I do have a little bit of a, back and forth about Melbourne weather on the podcast, but, he's in South Australia. What can I say? Okay. So what do you think your stories have for, readers? Why should the listeners read your books?
Escape. I think that's the biggest reason. So the stories that I write, they're designed to pull you out of the daily grind and into another world. And I think there's a lot to be said for stories that do just that.
Yeah.
If you choose to take away some philosophical points about birthing ethics,
Yep.
maternal instinct,
Yes.
or end of life ethics, stealing
Yes.
time, that's up to you. But I like to be able to write on different levels. So at the end of the day, they're an easy, immersive read that you can enjoy even when you're totally exhausted at the end of a hard day.
Sorry, there's my little doggy just helping herself to a little barking in the background there for listeners. Joys of working from home.
Oh, absolutely.
So who was your favourite character to write in Stealing Time?
I loved writing Eleanor. Vari is the protagonist. So she's our time physicist, fourth dimension physicist. Eleanor is her mother. Vari is written in the third person. Eleanor, I started writing in the first person because once I started writing with her, the words just gushed out onto the page. So I think I want to be like her when I'm in my 60s. She's utterly irreverent. She's very self-assured, but ultimately she's kind and generous.
Oh, that is just fantastic. What a beautiful description of an older woman. I love that. Utterly irreverent. Yeah, fantastic. So tell me, do you write, does it kind of pour out? You said talk about writing around the edges. I love that too. And, as a young mum, full-time work, couple of kids, where do you find the time? When do you find the time?
Sometimes I don't. And I think that's something that I've come to terms with, is that there's that saying that you can have all the things, but you can't have them all at the same time. And so I'll go through periods where I write a lot. I have written, I think, a total of 5,000 words in the last 12 months because of various reasons, including COVID, and the challenges of working from home. But when I am writing, it'll be in short bursts. So it might be half an hour while the kids are in bed at night. It might be 20 minutes on the train on the way to work. And it's difficult to keep the characters and the scenes in your head. So I have started plotting more than I did in the first book. So for the third book, I have a real outline going. So yes, writing in the edges. The old adage that you should write every day is fabulous if you can carve out a regular period. But if you can't write every day, that's fine too. It still work.
Yeah, just write when you can. But not only do you write novels, but you also have a blog that you mentioned. So tell us a little bit, how long has Story Addict been out there?
Story Addict has been out there in some form or another since 2013. It started out as a blog called Seeing the Lighter Side of Parenting, and it's always included book reviews. But at some point when my kids got a bit older, I stopped writing about them because they started being able to read.
Right, yes.
And they got to the point where I look at it and go, I've always measured it against whether they feel embarrassed, but this is I just think they wouldn't like anything about themselves out there. So I relaunched it as Story Addict, and I write only book reviews now, and I absolutely love it. And 2 years ago, I joined the Australian Women Writers Challenge as a diversity editor there.
Fantastic.
And that's partly because I like giving back to the community. And so that's me doing my bit. The diversity and inclusion, and also promoting authors, Australian women authors. There's just some really, really great stories out there.
Yeah, a fantastic combination. So what are your favourite books that you've seen come through maybe on the diversity roundup that you do? Can you mention some of those?
Can we take a pause while I go?
Yes, absolutely. Wow.
I have this.
So, Rebecca, as the diversity editor for the Australian Women's Writers Challenge, what are some of your favourites or some of the books that have perhaps had the most impact on you or you've seen come through as reviews?
Part of the beauty of being diversity editor is that you do see so many of them and get to read the reviews. And I put together a list myself for 2021 of the books by Australian women.
Fantastic.
That I'm going to read. And
Excellent.
I've read a few of them
good.
already. So Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason is absolutely brilliant. It's about a woman who's coming to terms with her own mental illness through a lifetime, and how she deals with that and how those around her deal with it as well. So that's absolutely brilliant. Highly recommend that one. Growing Up Disabled in Australia, edited by Findlay. That's just come out, I think, earlier this month.
Yes, I have just finished reading that.
It is absolutely brilliant. I actually had to pause reading it about halfway through because it had such an impact on me. But again, I recommend everybody read that one. I know a lot about disability. I worked as a disability liaison officer at Melbourne Uni many years ago. But I have learned so much from this book. It's wonderful to read stories by people who are disabled and their many and varied experiences.
Yeah, and the social model of disability, I think, was for me a big eye-opener. As a mother of a child with a disability, that just kind of blew me away. And I thought, oh, if only we'd known that a little earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's one of those things you learn about afterwards and you think, well, that makes perfect sense. Why didn't we think about that before? But
that is absolutely right. Yeah.
Sometimes we just need it spelled out for us, don't we?
Yeah. Sorry, interrupting. Go on. Next one.
No. They're my main picks for now. I could go on and on and on.
No, some good recommendations there.
Now. Yeah.
But certainly I'd recommend to our listeners to follow the Australian Women's Writers Challenge, and you can read whatever you like. We're hoping to have a chat with somebody from AWW a little later this month, so we won't go too much into it or make you do too much spruiking, because we're really here to talk about your book, Rebecca. So what is is there a message in there, or is there something that you think that will attract a particular reader to the story? You mentioned that, maternal instinct was mostly about young mums. Who do you think is going to be the audience for Stealing Time?
Stealing Time is, I think, for anyone who feels pushed for time or is a bit over our society's focus on productivity. And this idea that we have to make every moment of every day productive. We have to be doing something or achieving something. I think it'll be a bit of a balm for anyone who wants to step off the treadmill and to see what our society might look like if we keep pushing that dial up and up and up. And that's our value base. To have our value base through productivity, this is the kind of society in Stealing Time that we could end up with. Just one of a number of outcomes. But that's certainly one of them.
It's so very possible. Lovely. Rebecca, where can people find you online? Just run through where they can catch up with you.
Sure, they can catch me at storyaddict.com.au. That's my home on the internet. I'm also on Twitter at Rebecca Bowyer AU. That's Bowyer's Bowyer. I'm also on Instagram at Rebecca Bowyer Writer and Facebook at Rebecca Bowyer Writer.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much for your time, being so generous with your responses and telling us all about Stealing Time, which is hopefully out very soon.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Veronica.
No worries at all. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
So what a brilliant chat with Rebecca. I could have talked to her for ages. And in fact, I have to admit that we talked a little bit after we finished recording, but then we both had to go. So,
thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you so much for being on the show, Rebecca. That was amazing.
Yeah, it was just, I cannot believe where people get their ideas from, because some people just have such a beautiful way. And, as I said in the interview, just every word is just gives you something, which is fantastic. So I wanted to pick up on a couple of things. And one, I guess, is very much in the minds of a lot of Australians at the moment around, I guess, the government as a villain. It's in, and, it was in the conference that I've just been to as well. They're kind of often seen as the big bad. It could be the 1984 Big Brother kind of thing. It could be Animal Farm. It could be those kind of classics. But it's well, I won't say it's easy, but why is it easy for us to imagine that the government is the villain? Have you ever thought about that?
Well, yeah, obviously I do think about that a lot. But listening to Rebecca's interview, it did prompt me some really interesting pathways of exploring that, as far as just sitting there musing on it. So, for example, I know Rebecca mentioned that a crucial plot of one of her books was whether to choose, for the protagonist to choose all of the children to live or just one child who, in theory is most important. And I was thinking, well, that's interesting because when it comes to, I guess, conspiracies and the themes of government overreach in literature, or that concept of the government being, we can easily imagine as a antagonist or a bad person. I'm wondering if that because essentially that's a dystopian element, whatever the setting. I'm wondering if that comes from like the government being able to get to that position comes from no real feeling, not feeling a true gravity from the choices that we have when it comes to voting. I was thinking about it, like if we go back to say, I don't know, 1985, and from 1985 till 2021, and I'm talking about obviously Australia, I can't speak for other countries, regardless of who's been in power, I mean, I'm trying to think what drastic changes has impacted our lives as a direct result of who we voted in. And obviously, so for example, the GST was brought in, but I think that may or may not have been something that was needed for the country regardless. That. But as far as, when I go to vote, what the next day, what changes? And I can't think of anything except for freedom. Now, are we freer today than what we were, for example, 20 years ago? So I think that's where, because I think most times when I'm reading, like an antagonistic government in a story, especially in your dystopian or sci-fi, it's never a particular branch, particular side of the government. It's not like, for example, in Australia, it's not a Liberal government, a Labor government, a national government. It's just the government, because there's no side of the government, I think, that is immune from easily becoming a bad person. And, and I think imagine if there was a real gravity to our voting, if there was an instant, or not an instant, but a big, something that's going to affect our lives in a drastic way, for example, going back to do you pick all the children or one child? That's a very difficult decision. But if there was at least some element of that gravity, I wonder if that would change the way our governments are currently acting like a bunch of school kids. No, not school kids, ridiculous puppies that have had no training, shall we say. School kids are probably far wiser than a lot of our current members of parliament. So I think, and in literature, I think really it's not so much stuff that impacts every day to the point of policies and that. It's just, ultimately it all comes down to freedom, I would think. That's the way I sort of perceive it. And whether, are we freer or do we have more freedoms today than 10 years ago? And, I mean, that's up for debate, of course. I would say no, in the sense of it's harder to do many things. There's the illusion of freedom, but for example, for a small business in Australia, is it easier or harder to start a small business now? I would submit that it's probably harder with all the different regulations, all the money's involved, all the, the insurances and the red tape. I think it's probably a lot more difficult, unless, of course, you've got lots of money.
Or you are a woman, because we would say that it is easier because 50 years ago, you couldn't open a bank account as a woman. You had to have your husband or
that's an interesting point.
Sign off on that. So I wonder how much of that fact alone, I know that the vast majority of small businesses are started by women, and I'll have to get the stats and support this, absolutely. But I also know that small businesses are a huge part of the economy. And while we may not necessarily be seen on the media as some of, the big conglomerations and the kind of, big media savvy people, we are there ticking over the economy as best we can. And, all kudos to the many small businesses who lost their business during the pandemic, and for those who've survived and tried to support their staff as well. So, yeah, interesting. One thing that I found was a kind of a similar but different is that somebody there was an article by Jackie Bruley in August 25, 2020, where they talked about the fact that 5 reasons why conspiracy theories thrive in science and science fiction. And this person felt that it was a little bit like that there were, I guess, some physiology things, there were some psychology things, and she said, or the person said, that's the divide that we really need to address, is that intuitionist versus rationalist. And it was based on the American political divide. And that's what they said, that, the divide we really need to address and figure out how to bridge and how to communicate across. So that the policies were just manifestations of people either being intuitionists, where they kind of go with their gut, they're attracted to symbols and metaphors, those kind of things. And that's how they manage stress. But it can lead to an uptick in conspiracy thought, because deprived of control. So that's where the segue to what you were mentioning about control and freedom. And, those people can engage in more superstitious kind of theories, but rational thought can only take us so far. Then, they go on to talk about all those things about, conspiracy thought could be self-fulfilling. So if we believe the government's bad, then the government becomes bad, and everything the government comes out as, we're going to, choose to see the bad part of it. But the world needs rationalists and intuitionists. So, yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, and I read a little bit about, just the general state of conspiracy themes in literature. And one of the articles I read, said predominantly and historically, conspiracy fiction, I guess, is usually, the protagonist is usually a detective or a journalist, somebody who starts to pluck a thread. But I think that's changing a lot now, because everybody has so much access to information and disinformation that, realistically, anybody can fall down the rabbit hole of a conspiracy theory, or essentially create their own conspiracy theory. And, whether it's something that draws other people into is it's up to the nature of the conspiracy theory, I guess. But I'm wondering if that general rule applies anymore, that it's always a detective or a journalist or a researcher or somebody who is already in that area of looking into things, that because nowadays anybody, you jump on the internet and just go into any rabbit hole you like. But the interesting thing is, with conspiracy theories, it's very easy now to, I guess it's like, the concept of the echo chamber, where if you tend to believe in a particular conspiracy theory, then all the research you do it's very easy to fall in the trap of only following and reading those things that confirm your own theory already, rather than look objectively at both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say they can do that with statistics as well. So we could talk about conspiracy theories, of course, forever. But one of the other things that, and not conspiracy theories, but, the government is villain, I guess, in terms of literary things.
That's not even fiction, is it? No.
And maybe we need to get on a thriller and a mystery group to talk about conspiracies and so those, deep think tank kind of things. But anyway, that's for another day. And we will do some more panels. That's the other thing, is that I've got so many ideas about the panels. I just loved getting the experts on and listening to what they had to say about their genre. People know lots, and now I know a little bit more.
Absolutely. But I think it wasn't ageism one of the elements. Yeah, I think that's very timely.
That's one thing. As a 60-year-old, I'm just, and I said to Rebecca, I was a bit concerned that in her story, people at 65, voluntarily, doing inverted commas here in my mind, you can't see me on the audio, but voluntarily were euthanized. And having been kind of, tangentially watching the Victorian voluntary assisted dying legislation being prepared and passed, it made me look up to see how many people have chosen that way, because this is now in Australia, or in Victoria at least, as I know some of the other states are doing slightly different things, this is a reality. So there are several assessments, and there are permissions required, and there are doctors, and more than one has to sign off, and there are only a limited range of terminal illnesses that make you eligible. But you can now in Victoria, if you pass all of those things and are issued with a permit, take a medication that will result in your death. So when I had a bit of a look, sort of in the 6 months the last half of, it started on the 19th of June 2019, and then in the kind of 6 months to December, 136 people started the assessment process, 102 people progressed to a second assessment, 81 were issued with a permit, and then 52 people died using their medication. So there is, and I think there was probably, they were projecting around 100 to 150 people per year. And while that in itself brings up a whole range of issues, I think that it's another reminder for me of how writers describing worlds and the layers and the politics and the processes and the culture and all of those things are taking in reflections of what we're seeing now. And so now you can actually do, again, if with all the qualifications, there are ways for you to have an assisted death in Victoria. It's not something airy-fairy. It's not something written in science fiction.
Yeah, and like you sort of hinted there, I think that's one of the truly important aspects of literature is the ability to take the reader on a journey where to investigate themes that may be difficult, uncomfortable, or even completely foreign, but need addressing. But I still think it's, as far as what's happening in Victoria, it just sounds very surrealistic or surreal. The concept of, here is your permit. Mm-hmm. You are now allowed to free yourself from pain. It's like the idea of having to have a permit from the government is still. I mean, I know that they're doing it for the right reasons, and I think it is definitely a step in the right direction. But it just sounds so strange, doesn't it? To have to get a permit. I mean, a permit is something. I think of a permit as if you want to get a gun or drive a boat or, or teach yoga on the beach, because, everything needs a permit. But as far as, something that's a medical decision and a life-changing, literally
But
decision.
see, there I'd say it's not a medical decision, it's an individual decision. And that's where kind of, dying with dignity and having that control over your own life. Because, what they found doing a whole lot of research is that a lot of people accessed the assessments and the permits, and some even got the medication, but not everybody chose to use it. But when they were asked, they said, well, I want to be able to if I want to. Now that I have control, and now I think, yep, I can die when I want to. I can choose to end the pain, or no, actually, I'm going to hang on a bit longer now that I know that it's there if ever I need it. So, yeah, it is a huge field to talk about. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So let's go on.
I was just going to, in relation to literature too, it's, especially when it comes to a lot of sci-fi, I guess, there's a lot of stories out there where the, at a certain point, in societies, basically push away the elderly, that there's a lot of different themes out there, which is always weird for me, because that's the wisest of the race.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
it makes no sense. And let's talk medical. Like if I'm in a crucial situation where I need to be cut open, which unfortunately has happened a few times, but if I had my eyes open at the time and looked up and could choose from a 20-year-old and a 65-year-old, I know which one I'm going to go with, because that's where the experience is, and that's where the wisdom is, and the life learning that means they can their options in their mind. They have far more options available when it comes to making a decision, because they have such a huge palette of experience. So it and I think that's why when we read stories where, for example, when they reach the age of 50 or 60 and they need to cull, for to be put it crudely, I think that's why at some sort of, whether it's subconscious level or the theme itself comes across as bad, because I think deep down, surely we all are aware that the reason why it's bad is because that's getting rid of knowledge. That's getting rid of, something that's such a important, benefit to society, such an important asset to, any society that wants to walk forward. So yes, it's definitely, and it is a timely sort of theme anyway, especially in today's, 2021 in Australia, where, COVID is obviously a big issue still around the world. But you
Yeah.
know, when we're having this dilemma with vaccines, and now, well, it's not good for anybody under 50 to have it, but it's okay for people over 50. Is very strange concept.
Yeah, and
That's kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, I did have. I was chatting to my friend on the weekend who is also in health, and she said that, and I have to go and look this up. Dr. Norman Swan did a good explanation of why that particularly is not a bad thing, but it could be a good thing. So I must go and have a look at that. Now, I do want to just bring up one more thing about Rebecca's book, Stealing Time. Time tabs. How would you love to have a little something like that you put on your tongue and bingo, the rest of the world stops for 4 hours while you get on and do whatever it is that you want to do.
Okay. I thought, having not read the book, I thought a time tab was more along the lines of allocated time to live, and you could, you know,
No.
lose
Well, I mean,
some
there is
or
that as
increase
well.
some, depending on. I know there's
Yeah.
a couple of stories that sort of work around that premise, but
Yeah, and I'm also going to admit that in my book Soul Stuff, which is the second in the Opal Dreaming series, that on one of the worlds, which are running out of resources, I have people die at 66. But anyway, I might have to go back and revisit that. It's not published yet. So, but no, time tabs are like, I don't know if you remember the little menthol things that used to dissolve on your tongue.
oh yeah, your little
Yeah.
strips.
So that's, yeah. So Rebecca was saying that she was kind of imagining it was like that. You put it on your tongue and, you know, the world just kind of stops, and then you've got a little bubble of time that you can do with what you want.
Oh, look, I think it's always been a fantasy, I guess, or, you know, just a cool thought project, and that is if you could hit pause and then walk around.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
That's right.
Yeah, it's always something cool. It's used a lot, obviously, in video games. There's a lot of games where you can actually, or essentially, slow time right down, but you can still sometimes move fast, or you yourself slow down as well. But you know, when it comes to shooting and stuff, it's quite interesting. You said, and then everything's like super slow, like the Matrix, I guess, when it goes slow. But yes, I would look. I would definitely pop that on my tongue, and I'd hope to have a whole lot more sitting in my pocket too.
All right. Well, we've got to be close to time, Darren. I think that we have got ourselves nearly there. Is there anything else that we need to cover in this session?
No, I think it was fantastic for Rebecca to come on the show, and obviously gave a lot of food for thought, and you know, lots of themes to consider, which is something I've been doing all morning, having, you know, thinking about the government and all the conspiracies and, you know, that sort of stuff. So it's been fantastic. But again, just a huge thank you to all of our listeners, and I think, you know, it's time for us to try, and obviously stay tuned, because there's still going to be some great book reviews and cameos. And but for now, I think it's time we try our exit tagline, see if we can do it really cool this time. Number 8.
We will. But hang on. Wait. I've just remembered. If somebody else has a book review and you've read one of the books on the Australian Book Lovers website, please send us in your review, because you must be getting sick of hearing my voice at the end. So record it, send it in to us. And if you also just want to tell us what book you're reading and you want us to try and chase the author and get them to jump onto Australian Book Lovers, send us an email, australianbooklovers@gmail.com, and we will do our best to approach the author and say, hey, you've got a fan and they'd like to see your book here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for, look, any comments, even if you know, whatever reason you'd like to write in, by all means, please do write to us at australianbooklovers@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, whether you've got some ideas for future episodes, or like Veronica said, if you just want to let us know what you're reading at the moment, and give some good advice for other readers out there, let them know how good the book is, anything at all. We'd love to hear from you. So please do write to australianbooklovers@gmail.com, and we will definitely be in touch if you do reach out to us. That'll be fantastic.
You can follow us at Twitter @Australian Books, on Facebook and Instagram @Australian Book Lovers, and you can see what Bobby's been up to on a daily basis when he gives you the pick of the day. And otherwise, australianbooklovers.com is on the web. All right. Now, of course
it is. It's on the internet. Okay. Well, to everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And here we go. We're going to, because it's episode 8, it has to be at least an 8 out of 10 performance-wise. So maybe I'll bring us in and let's see how we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And remember, to read more
more
Aussie books.
books.
Yeah, I think that's pretty
Yay.
good. Squeaky chair and all. Thank you, everybody, again. And really looking forward to catching up with everybody on the next episode. So you take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Hi there. My name is Laurie Bell. I write science fiction and fantasy. I'm also a blogger, reviewer, flash fiction writer, narrator, and the author of Whitefire, a Tony Dell adventure. It's an action-packed science fiction novel following a space agent on a dangerous mission to track down gun smugglers and save the Sector 1 Vice President from assassination. But everybody lies, so watch your back. There's also a robot dog and a snarky spaceship AI. Discover more about me in my books at australianbooklovers.com under science fiction. Bring sparkling wine.
In The Shining Wall by Melissa Ferguson, the author has given us a dangerous and disturbing glimpse into the future. She has mashed together a ruined world, the dire straits of what's left of humanity, their reliance on flawed technology, and their plundering of the past in a well-crafted plot. Not content with turfing their lower-class, diseased masses out beyond the walls of City 1, the upper echelons and Leader Corp have recreated their own worker-class neo-Neanderthals. As always, humans, be they sapien or Neanderthal, underestimate the individual's need for survival and connection. No matter how desperate the future, the characters still want a part of it. Ferguson's characters are relatable and reprehensible, everything you need in this brutal, climate-challenged tale. She is uncompromising in delivering on its promise. A great read.
Let's meet again. Where magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.